Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today, our good friend Mario Ineko from the Mineko64 YouTube channel. Mario, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome, and nice to be with you again, talking to you.
Great to talk to you as well, Mario. And one of the topics I really wanted to discuss today was how Russia is possibly considering backing the ruble with gold. Now, we really haven't seen any other country do this since 1971, right? When the US went off the gold standard. And at that point, really, the whole world went off the gold standard at that point, and no country's currency was backed by anything real. Now, Russia is considering rebacking its currency with gold. What is the significance of this?
Well, I think the significance is not even so much for the ruble. It's just that it shows that the substitute for the fiat dollar is only gold. And if you're going to be a country like Russia or any other big power, and you want to go it on your own with your currency, it's going to have some strong backing with a monetary asset that has thousands of years of track record. The other thing I would say, it goes even further back beyond 1971, because technically we were not on the gold standard. We were on a gold exchange system. Uh, all the other currencies were indirectly backed by gold because they were fixed to the dollar, but you couldn't take British pounds or Deutschmarks or Japanese yen and redeem them for gold. You had to first get the dollars and then redeem them for gold. So going back to a true gold standard would be quite a move, and it would take us back to like over 100 years ago, because that's where we were before World War One. We were on a classical gold standard, and I also noticed that Russia is talking about having a commodity basket backing the ruble. That could be a good thing. At least we'd be moving from credit-based fiat currency system that's created out of thin air to a system that's more real, that's based on real things, and I think that can only be a good thing. We've gone too far the other way in terms of financialization, and we need to go back more to I would say a stable store of value, not just for the ruble, but for all other currencies around the world. And I think that's why you see a lot of countries, especially non-Western countries, accumulating gold for the last few years, because I think they know what's coming. In the West, I think they're still in denial, our monetary and political leaders, about gold. They try to keep it, away from public discussion.
We have seen countries move towards gold more. They're accumulating more gold. The central banks are accumulating more gold. So it does seem like something is up, that gold may play a major role in the financial system going forward. I guess what we're seeing right now is Russia possibly moving towards that, but you're thinking other countries will follow suit.
Yeah, I think they will have to. And I think what Russia did recently, uh, they pegged the ruble to gold, 5,000 rubles per gram. But that was just temporary in order to stabilize the ruble. At the time, I think gold was around 1950, and the ruble was around 100. And it straight away, the dollar dropped against the ruble, and it kind of pegged the ruble to around the 80 level, even though I think we're further down now, the ruble. I think as we speak here right now, the ruble is down to 70. So just by fixing or pegging the ruble for a few weeks to gold, look at what world of good it did to the ruble. And I think Russia's in a position to do that, because there are a few points about Russia that are really interesting. They have very little national debt to GDP. I think it's 17%. Their external debt as well is about 33%. They have a very relatively well-educated population. a lot of natural resources. So people who say that the Russian economy is in shambles and it's going to collapse, I think they were very wrong. And I think it's very difficult for a country like Russia, very difficult for the system that is the fiat currency system, when you have people starting to adopt more sound money policies like Russia seems to be wanting to do. Plus, the sanction front as well. The fact that the dollar system is using its exorbitant privilege, if you want to call it, to impose political diktats on other countries, and people are waking up to it. And even China now, there's been a lot of talk, and you wanted to talk about that as well. So maybe you can segue into that about sanctions against China, Taiwan, the Solomon Islands, and even now there's talk about uh, having a shutdown in Beijing because of COVID.
You're mentioning how it looks like we might be seeing sanctions now on China coming in the near future. We're already seeing a slowdown in their economy because of shutdowns. What will be the impact on the rest of the world if we do see sanctions imposed on China as well?
Yeah, and we're not just saying this because we're speculating. I think even though we were talking about this a few weeks ago or even over a month ago, but I'm starting to see more and more stories. For example, today I just saw in the FT that the US is holding high-level talks with UK over China threat to Taiwan. And I mean, the repercussions of sanctions on the Chinese government or Chinese oligarchs, if you want to call them, very wealthy Chinese, will be huge. It will make, I think, the sanctions on Russia seem like small, small. And I think the world, not just China, has a lot to lose if we sanction the Chinese. China has got over $3 trillion in financial assets outside China. I think just over $1 trillion in U.S. Treasuries, in corporate bonds, equities, and not to say, not to mention, the fact that China is basically the supermarket manufacturer of all kinds of goods, not just like finished goods, but also goods that serve to produce other goods in some other countries. They become inputs to final goods. We know that manufacturing base of the West has moved to China in the last 25, 30 years. So it would be a huge impact. I guess Russia, the impact has been on commodities. Uh, China is going to be an impact in everything else, I would say. So it's very serious. But sometimes you kind of wonder if that's what the powers that be want. The more desperate they get to retain a grip on power, the crazier things get. The other thing as well is with the situation, monetary situation, fiscal situation, the fact that the economies in the West are slowing down. We saw last week that Q1 GDP, the advanced GDP, dropped by 1.4%. Here in the UK, it's not getting better either. And I would say Europe is even worse.
Coming full circle here, if we do see a gold backing of the ruble, how do you think that is going to impact the global economy? Could that slow things as well? Because, I mean, as we're talking about, we're already seeing a slowing in the global economy. Here in the US, we're seeing negative GDP for this last quarter.
Yeah, I think the ruble, if it does go to a gold backing, won't really have an impact on things. It's just going to be a symptom of a dying currency system. And when you have a dying currency system, usually the economy is on its last legs. And that's because, why is that? Well, because the fiat currency, the other side of a fiat currency is debt. And if the credit system, the debt can't expand anymore, be it for a loss of faith and confidence in the debt, which leads to higher rates, higher yields. It slows everything down. The credit spigot is just going to be turned off. And yes, and Russia is in a good position to weather that storm. And I'm not trying to defend Russia or anything. I'm just observing. And why do I say that? Well, because they have very little debt as an economy. And I think Jim Rickards mentioned it in an interview with Greg Hunter that uh, Putin doesn't like many of the oligarchs, anyways. So all the sanctions that we put on the oligarchs, Putin's happy with it because they're bringing all their money that they have in the West back to Russia. So yeah, the gold-backed ruble is just going to be a symptom of a failing petrodollar or fiat dollar, and it's going to be worldwide. And that's why the Chinese yuan as well, I think, has been dropping quite sharply, because even though some people speculate the Chinese have a lot of gold, they're still operating under a fiat currency system with the dollar at a base. But they too, I think, will, they're not going to be it's not going to be all roses for the Chinese, but they have better prospects, I would say, than us in the West, because they've got a lot of gold, and they'll be able to tap into that.
Now, obviously, currencies failing is going to be good for gold and also silver. Do you see any immediate impact though if Russia does back the ruble with gold? Do you see any immediate impact on the gold price?
I guess it would depend at what rate they do it, whether there will be like an arbitrage if they do it at a very high rate compared to the COMEX LBMA price. It will also depend on the dollar ruble exchange rate. We could see people trying to accumulate gold in the West at a cheap rate and trying to exchange it for more in Russia. So yeah, it will depend, but also the psychological impact. I think it will show the world that gold is not just a useless pet rock, that it's really important. Even though I'm sure the mainstream media, the politicians, and others will try to say, "Well, this is just Putin again. He's using an old relic, doesn't know what he's doing." But you and I know that it's a good thing to have sound money, and I think it will be. It's not really the reason why I think it's interesting and good to have gold and silver, but it will definitely probably help the dollar price of gold and silver.
Now, when it comes to how this will impact silver, if we do see multiple countries starting to move towards gold backed systems, do you see this having any impact on the silver price?
Yeah, definitely. I think silver is like the little brother of gold, so I think it will have a big impact. And the fact that currencies are losing value versus hard assets is another plus. I know silver is having a hard time, especially in the last week or so, but yeah, I still think it's a steal. And eventually people will wake up to the fact that it's very undervalued, not just against paper assets, but even against gold.
In a video recently, you did mention the gold silver ratio and how it is rising. So, as we're seeing precious metals pull back, we're actually seeing silver pull back more than gold. What do you think is happening right now, and why are we seeing the gold silver ratio rising?
I think it's a little bit like in 2020, in the run up to March 2020, when there was like worries about not just gold and silver, but also the overall market. People were liquidating the stocks, and currencies were falling against the dollar. And silver is usually seen more as a hybrid, monetary and industrial. And I think that's what's happening right now. But I would say today, for example, I'm looking here, silver has been outperforming gold all day. And it's been a pretty rough day for the precious metals. So maybe we're starting to see the bottoming or topping of that gold silver ratio right now. Right now, I see silver's down 1% and gold is down 1.7%. Usually it's the other way around. So, and I've noticed as well that spot silver traded down to 22.11 and it's now at 22.56. Could that have been like a panic bottom? Maybe, even though I don't want to call a bottom, but it looks like we could be approaching a level where things are a bit overdone.
And your expectation then for the precious metals moving forward here, you're saying we could possibly have seen a bottom?
Yeah, today maybe. And today is interesting because it's a bank holiday in London. So the physical market in London, which is a big market, is probably not really active. So I saw that the commitment of traders for gold, the commercials still have a huge short position. They haven't been able to uh, cut that position that much, even after the correction we've had from above 2000. So they're desperate, I think, to cover. And what better way to cover it than to smash the futures with a few thousand contracts driving through like key technical levels, and then letting the speculators sell even more and then buy it back. So that's what I think could be happening. And yeah, it's always hard to call a bottom, but at least the action in silver today is pointing to that. We should be seeing silver underperform, and it's outperforming.
No, did you want to share with the viewers kind of the some last thoughts regarding the possible backing of the ruble with gold and also the slowing of the global economy? How do people prepare for what is ahead?
As for the gold backing of the ruble, some people have asked, well, how do I get rubles? I want to have rubles. Well, just have gold because the gold and ruble will be interchangeable. And again, I think it's going to start a trend all over the world. And it's more than just the ruble. It's just that when the dollar goes in terms of being the major reserve currency, when people don't perceive it as being as good as gold anymore, gold is going to be important not just for the ruble but for uh, everyone else. In the last 25 years, a slowing global economy, in terms of investment, people would have been told to buy bonds because usually interest rates would drop and yields would drop. But now we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing 1970s style move in asset markets away from stocks and bonds. So I haven't changed my strategy and my view that people, if they want to protect themselves financially, should have some exposure to hard assets, not just gold and silver, but also, if more speculative, the miners and also other commodities, I would say.
Now, some people are expecting that with the slowing economy and possibly tightening from the central banks, we could see a downturn in kind of all asset classes, especially stocks and precious metals, like we kind of saw in 2008 and right when COVID hit and everything was shutting down. Kind of everything took a big dip right there. Precious metals did recover pretty fast, but your take on that? Could we see further downside in the precious metals?
Um, Up until a week or so ago, maybe 10 days, precious metals, commodities were way up year to date. Stock market was down year to date, bond markets as well. And more recently, though, we've seen the acceleration in the drop in bonds and stocks. And actually, yes, gold, silver, commodities, the miners, they've all corrected quite sharply. And I think this is happening now. This is the March 2020 or 2008 scenario, but I don't think it's going to be as sharp for commodities and precious metals. I think silver might be slightly down year to date now. Gold is still up year to date. Most commodities are up still year to date. So I think we need to think more in terms of stagflation and the 70s, and the fact that I think precious metals, commodities are going to outperform the stock market and the bond market. So I don't think it's going to be like 2020 uh, and 2008. If anything, hard assets and commodities are going to outperform. And I think we're going to stay in the bear market in the stock market and bond market.
All right. Well, Mario, we really appreciate your time today. Any last thoughts you'd like to leave with our viewers, and where can our viewers find you online?
Yeah, well, the viewers can find me on YouTube at Maneko64. I'm also on Twitter. And what have I got to say to the viewers? Well, just try to look at the bigger picture and try to realize that what we're having now is um, a kind of a collapse of the currency system. And when that happens, seeing that the currency is backed by bonds or treasury bonds and all other government bonds, it's not going to be a safe place to be in the bond market either. So no stocks and bonds, and try to stick to hard assets, I would say.
All right. Once again, Mario, thank you so much for your time, and God bless.
You're welcome, and God bless, Elijah. Take care.